Hi, I'm Caroline, and I've created a lot of things, but mostly I've created a life I love. Join me on my journey as a podcaster, business owner, and mom as I try to create all the things. Welcome to the Caroline Creates podcast. Hello, everyone, and happy Hearts Day. Today, the day that this episode is actually airing, is Valentine's Day 2019. I am not a huge Valentine's Day celebrator. I think, back when we were first married, my husband and I have been married for 10 years. And when we were first married, I think we kind of made an effort, but now we just kind of don't really see it as being that big of a deal, It was a fun holiday to design for when I was a stationery designer. But I'm lucky if I remember to go get my husband a card. Although I do have some really fabulous cards for him this year, which I got from a friend of mine who has an amazing company called Unblushing, and you should check it out. And I will put that link in the show notes for you guys. You can go check her out because she totally rocks. But anyways, today, since it is Valentine's Day, I thought I would talk about love, but not love in the romantic sense. I want to talk about loving on your podcast. So we spend a lot of time, especially if you're a business owner and you have a podcast, doing a lot of things. And I think, for most podcasters, it's not your full-time job, right? Like actually sitting down and doing the episodes is not your full-time gig. And so you've got a lot going on. A lot of times the podcast can kind of come, into the back burner, basically. Like you record the episodes, you get them out, and that's just like the best you could do. And I totally get that because literally keeping it real, being transparent, I am recording this on Tuesday and it's supposed to air on Thursday because I just have not had the time to sit down and record. And I completely blame myself because we decided to get 2 puppies and what were we thinking? But life is crazy and wonderful. And so anyways, so let's just dive into some ways that you can maybe show your podcast some love this Valentine's Day. I want to start kind of on the back end of the podcast because I feel like this is the area that gets the least amount of attention. So what kind of system are you using? Is it working for you? Do you have something that makes a lot of sense for your workflow? Systems are really, really important. And I definitely think that it's kind of an evolving thing. It's not necessarily something that you're going to have put together right away, but it is important to work on them and get them refined because if you have a good system in place, it's going to make life a lot easier for you. You've heard me talk a million times about Trello. I feel like every day I talk about Trello. I mean, I literally talk about Trello to everybody, but definitely check it out. I love Trello. I love Asana as well. And both of those, what I like about them is that you're able to look at your podcast schedule as a whole, but then also kind of dive in deeper. And then what I like to do from there are create some pretty in-depth checklists, like literally listing out each step that has to occur, especially when you have more than one set of hands in the pot. I have a VA who will help me. And then also I have a co-host. And so having just details beyond details is really great. Also, the thing that's really cool about that is a lot of these things you can attach things to them. And so that's really helpful too. So we can kind of have everything for an episode all in one place. It makes planning really easy. I love going into the calendar view on Asana or Trello and moving things around on the calendar. We're able to kind of look at the schedule that way and look at the flow of the episodes, make sure that they make sense. It's really great. So definitely think about your systems, think about how you're using them. I do have a Trello board and I will put a link to that in the show notes. Now, some other things that you can do to kind of love on your podcast and get ahead is plan out your social media. So does anybody else forget to post on Instagram? She raises her hand. Social media can be super frustrating. I feel like I've been in this mode since last month, which, if you haven't listened to the first episode of the season, please go listen to it to know my story. I've just been in this mode to like disconnect myself and kind of focus on what's really, really important in my life. And I've taken a lot of the social media off my phone, which is really great. And it makes my life feel amazing and less stressful, my anxiety levels down, all those things. But the problem with that is that I oftentimes forget to post on social media. And, so this month I actually like sat down and planned my entire months of social media, and like I specifically use Instagram, and like got it all done and scheduled, wrote all the captions. And can I tell you, it was the most amazing feeling. When I talk about feeling love, like I was feeling all the love for the social media. And it's really nice too, because then I wake up and I get a little notification that my Instagram post is posted, and it's like, oh yeah, that's right, I scheduled that. That feels really great. And the tool that I use is Planoly, and I really love it. It's really easy to use. I like that you can kind of look at everything as a grid. It's really great. It's free. So I'll put the link in the show notes for that one as well. The other way that you can show your podcast some love is by batching things. Batch, 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 batch. I know I say this all the time, and this is another like repeater. But again, it makes you feel so good to know that you are a few weeks ahead. And if you're unable to batch episodes, maybe batch some other things like social media, maybe batch your blog post, something like that. Find something that you can do to get ahead on. And that way it's like one less thing off of your plate each week. And it's amazing how good that feels. I also feel like with podcasting, when you are not batch recording and planning ahead, your content may not necessarily be as good because you're just trying to get something out there really fast. And so I find that when we batch record about once a month, and it is just phenomenal. It really is. I cannot recommend it enough. I think it's such a great way to show your podcast some love. Now, another way that you can show your podcast some love is by giving it a good old refresh. Think of it as a hug, if you will. Maybe you've been using the same intro and you're on episode 80 or 100 and it's time to shake it up. That's something that I am finding is really nice to do the further you get into your podcast. Also because too, I think you kind of understand better like what you want to say than when you first start out. And again, like I don't think there's anything wrong with updating these things. And so refreshing your intro, your outro, maybe adding some ads, something like that, I think is a really, really good idea. We even refreshed our brand at one point during the life of our podcast, and it seemed really kind of radical to change the entire brand of our podcast, but it actually was really great and really served our podcast well. So I think refreshing is one of those things that feels really good when you do it, and it almost gives you like a renewed energy and renews the why that you're doing this. So definitely consider that. While we're on the subject of like refreshing and things that are on the back end of your podcast, how is your website for your podcast? Do you have a website for your podcast? I really hope you do. If you don't, please go get one. They're really easy. No, we have a website on WordPress, and actually this year I completely overhauled it and redesigned it. So nice. Like I'm so happy with it. But I also know quite a few of my clients have websites on Squarespace, and they love Squarespace, but there are some really easy solutions for having a website for your podcast. So I definitely would do that, because you want to have a place to send people besides sending them to iTunes, Google Play, that kind of thing. Something new that I am trying out to show our podcast some love is we created a Patreon page. And this is something that I'm going to be exploring, and I'm going to be able to talk to you guys about it, about my experience with it. But we wanted to see how our audience would support us best. And so we created a very simple Patreon page. I have a little ad that runs at the end of our episodes that talks about Patreon, and we've started including it in our show notes. So it's not like we're splashing it around and begging people to come to it, but it is definitely something that we are trying. And I'm super excited to see how that works out for our podcast, especially because I know so many people do rely on Patreon. Now that we've kind of tackled some of the ways that you can love on your podcast on the back end, I want to talk a little bit about loving on yourself as a podcaster. So, being a podcaster is really awesome and super fun, but sometimes it can be exhausting and overwhelming. And, it requires a lot of you, right? Because it is you are your podcast, you are your podcast voice, you're creating content week after week, and it can become a lot. And so I really want you to boost yourself up a little bit. Give yourself some love, boost yourself up. You are amazing. It's an awesome thing that you're doing. Some of the ways that I kind of keep myself going and moving forward, and I've learned these things from other people. They weren't things that were, naturally inherent for me. But one of the things that I really love doing is keeping kind of a collection of our best reviews. And these are things that I will go back to and read if I'm feeling blue or I'm like, I just am not feeling this today. I'll go and read those reviews. And they just inspire me to keep going. And they inspire me to want to really continue the podcast, but continue it in the best way that I can. Another thing that I have been working on, and this is again kind of if you've listened to episode 1 of the season, you will, I talked about this a little bit, but have really gotten into affirmations, which is not something that I ever thought I would be interested in, but I do find that they really do help kind of change my mindset. And I know that coming up with affirmations is really hard. And one of the things that I have found that has helped me, and I am so in love with them, in fact, I ordered 2 more packs of them, is affirmation cards from Abundant Affirmations. And she has several sets. She has one set that's all about money mindset. She has a set that's just for moms. And then she has just kind of a regular set. And what's cool about this regular set, I just got them yesterday, is if you read the back of the card, it has the negative thing that you're feeling. So, for instance, I'm holding one right now that says, I breathe in calmness and breathe out worry. And on the back, it says, I feel anxious. And so the cool thing about this is like, if you're feeling not confident, if you're having that, you can kind of look through here and find the card that has the negative thing that you keep saying to yourself. Let me see if I can find a good one for us while we're here on the air. Okay, I love this one. It says, I always make mistakes. Do you ever sit down to record and feel like you cannot get out the words and you feel like all you're doing is making mistakes? And so the affirmation that you want to say to yourself is, I am not my failures or my successes. I love these so much. And so what I like to do is get a couple of these and kind of put them around. And I'll either have them on my desk or in the kitchen where my calendar and stuff is. And so, yeah, affirmations is a really good way to kind of change your mindset and boost yourself. And then if you feel like you need something a little bit further, I do have a small, short little e-course called Find Your Confidence as a Podcaster. And I created this to kind of give you the confidence to go into podcasting and to feel like you had some strength in your voice. And one of the things that I kind of focus on in this course is actually writing a mission statement for your podcast, which I think is really, really important to have to refer back to and to kind of use that as a judge against all the decisions you make for your podcast. And so that's something that you can do too for your podcast to show it some love, is work on that mission statement, refresh it, and have it in front of you when you sit down to record. So I am off. Today is Valentine's Day, and I am going to make a special dinner for my kiddos, and I even got some sparkling grape juice for them and some little Valentines, and I'm going to have a Valentine celebration with my kiddos. And I hope that you all have a wonderful Valentine's Day, and I hope that this podcast episode gives you some ideas of things you can do to truly show your podcast some love. I will be back next week with a new episode. Thanks for listening, guys. Before you go, please head to Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. I would love to hear from you. And to learn more about me and follow along my journey, head to www.carolinecreates.com. There you can also listen to episodes, watch YouTube videos, and find out more about my podcasting services. Thanks so much. Have a great day.